Hello. So, one of the biggest aspects of monastic life, and I think any deep spiritual practice in general, is learning more about who we are, or maybe it's better to say who we think we are. And even though I've been with my mind since I was born, and apparently even before then, I still find it quite surprising what can come up from time to time. And since I've ordained, I've discovered that there are a few areas that I need to work on that I didn't think were a problem when I first started out, such as pride and anger. But the issue I want to talk about today is perfectionism and how it can interfere with transforming the mind. So the topic of perfectionism and being an overachiever has already come up quite a few times in the teachings and the discussions, as well as the fear of failure that usually goes along with this kind of mindset. At the Abbey, we have a High Achievers Neurotic Society that has a full and growing membership. So it seems perfectionism can come up for a lot of people in their practice. So in regular lay life, perfectionism may have appeared to be an asset, bringing us praise, status, good grades, promotions, a nice salary, even self-esteem. However, chances are good that perfectionism also brought with it a number of undesirable side effects, like anxiety, irritation, stress, and not doing activities that we really find nourishing and enjoyable. We might have even turned to spirituality or religion to provide a relief from the materialistic and self-centered attitude that perfectionism involves. And I know I was attracted to Buddhism because it seemed to offer a simpler and more joyful way to approach life. But after living at the Abbey for over 3 years, I've seen some perfectionistic tendencies trying to sneak back in, even though I had vowed to leave them behind forever. And it's true that I used to base a large part of my self-worth off having impressive credentials and a career, so I don't know why I thought I would become a humble person overnight, but I did. So to me, perfectionism seems like a combination of pride, attachment, and ignorance, because it makes us believe that we know what actually brings happiness and that anyone who sees things differently is stupid. And Venerable Chosen once gave a talk on perfectionism that's in the Abbey Handbook for monastic trainees, where she posed a number of questions that help us reflect on whether perfectionism is helpful or harmful to our practice. And she pointed out that perfectionism's power is that we don't realize that it's merely an idea. We think it's a real external standard that everybody has, or if they don't have it, they should have it. So some questions that Venerable Chojen encourages us to ask about perfectionism are: does it lead us to be hard on ourselves and extremely judgmental? Speaking from my own experience, I would say that it certainly does. I found that it prevents me from having kindness and compassion for myself because I turn the imperfect parts of myself into an enemy. And this leads to a lot of internal conflict and self-hatred. And this in turn depletes all the positive energy that I need to continue to practice. Another question is, how does perfectionism affect our relationships with others when we expect them to be perfect? And again, I found that perfectionism leads me to be very judgmental and unaccepting of other people. As Venerable Chojen said, it's like they are not allowed to be a developing human being. They should be perfect already. And this judgmental, critical mind is especially painful when living in community, because there's always somebody who isn't doing something right. And there are a million and one reasons to get irritated throughout the day. And if I don't actively work to nip this tendency in the bud, I can find my mind getting in a really bad mood for no apparent good reason. And because there's a lot of comparison involved in trying to be perfect, jealousy and competitiveness are also likely to arise. One of the areas where perfectionism can be most dangerous is when making big life decisions. And this topic already came up during the orientation of EML. Perfectionism suggests that we have to know everything in advance before we can make a good decision, and it can thereby lead to procrastination. I know that thinking that I should know everything has prevented me from being able to learn and grow in important ways in the past, and it's made me averse to putting myself into challenging or unknown situations. What could have been seen as exciting adventures turned into intimidating tests that I was probably going to fail. And one of the methods that we use in Buddhism to overcome the mental afflictions is to focus on their disadvantages and how they cause suffering. So here are a few ways that I found that perfectionism negatively impacts spiritual practice. And this morning, Venerable Chochen already mentioned how the tight and grasping attitude of perfectionism can lead to lung, or an imbalance of the energetic winds within the body. And then this makes practice impossible. The second is that perfectionism destroys joy and contentment. We are never satisfied with others, with ourselves, or with the world, because something is always not measuring up. And even if we do something perfectly, we still need somebody to recognize it and praise us. And even if we do get that praise, we need to do it again because the high quickly wears off. And no matter how many texts we study or teachings we attend, we always want more. And we neglect to put the teachings that we already know into practice. With perfectionism, we end up living in perpetual dissatisfaction, and happiness and joy are continually elusive. And a third disadvantage of perfectionism is that it prevents us from being able to connect with others and to benefit them. So Venerable Chochen pointed out in her talk that if we want to become Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, we have to be able to relate to people where they are. And approaching others with a predetermined agenda of how they need to change will often cause the other person to shut down. And here we can see how there's a sense of being out of touch that goes along with perfectionism, and how it can easily damage relationships when we get frustrated or impatient with other people. Another disadvantage is that a perfectionistic attitude interferes with our ability to learn and grow from our mistakes and from difficult situations. And I think this is where the biggest danger is. So when things don't turn out as planned or we make a mistake, perfectionism can cause us to get stuck in our pity or anger or depression and prevent us from seeing the opportunity, seeing the situation as an opportunity to learn and grow. In Buddhism, we practice thought training, where we take adverse circumstances as fuel for our practice and determination to be free from suffering. The great masters have encouraged us to see our enemies as kinder to us than the Buddhists, because they are the only ones who can help us develop genuine love, compassion, and forgiveness. Choosing to take precepts or to live in community eventually brings up uncomfortable and challenging situations. But this helps us to develop the courage, determination, and fortitude that we need to progress along the path. And with a perfectionistic attitude, all of this becomes quite daunting or even impossible. And personally, I found that the most growth has come after extremely painful periods where I've had to work double or triply hard to overcome a particular affliction or destructive way of thinking. So one big lesson that I've learned is that if I'm struggling in my practice, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm doing something wrong. In fact, being able to see the junk in my mind clearly is a sign of progress. And perfectionism would have me believe the opposite, since I'm supposed to be perfect already. So given these disadvantages, how can we overcome perfectionism? Venerable Chochen recommended learning how to appreciate ourselves and others. This involves learning to focus on others' good qualities and our own good qualities, rather than immediately zeroing in on the flaws and imperfections. And thankfully, this is a habit that we can develop through repetition. Closely related to appreciation is rejoicing in our own and others' merit, learning to see the goodness in the world around us, the kindness of human beings, and the preciousness of our human life that enables us to learn and practice the spiritual path. The one practice that I've found very effective in improving my ability to recognize positive things throughout the day is that before going to bed each night, writing down 3 things that I was proud of doing that day. And also sometimes writing down things that other people did that I really appreciated. The people with perfectionist tendencies often worry about letting go of their standards, thinking that they're going to become incompetent and lazy slobs. The Venerable Chojen's advice was to work on developing the ability to accurately assess our talents, skills, and abilities. This involves learning how to tune into ourselves, to become aware of what's happening in our body and mind, and to respond constructively. It can be helpful at first to ask our teachers or other advanced practitioners to reflect back what they see in us. And this is something I've done a lot living here. But hopefully by continuing to study the Dharma, especially mind and mental factors, and developing mindfulness and introspective awareness, I'll be able to clearly identify my feelings and needs at any given time. Recognizing that I have the power to identify, accept, and heal painful emotions has been one of the most rewarding aspects of my practice and has helped me to accept the fact that I'm not perfect. So if you notice that you're often disappointed or unsatisfied with yourself or others, chances are some perfectionistic tendencies might be at play. And being attached to these expectations prevents us from being able to open our hearts to ourselves and to other beings, and blocks us from developing bodhicitta. So may we all try and work on dismantling the unrealistic expectations that we carry around so that we can continue to progress along the path to full awakening for the benefit of all.